It's a quiet night. Just past 1 a.m. I'm sprawled out on my couch, alone in the house, the kind of alone where the silence feels heavy, almost alive. The living room is dim, lit only by the flickering glow of the TV, some late-night show I'm barely paying attention to. My phone's in my hand, thumb lazily scrolling through whatever's trending, the usual mindless distraction. The house is still, so still that the hum of the TV feels like it's filling the whole world. From where I'm sitting, I can see through the dining room, straight to the back garden. The windows there are big, floor-to-ceiling, and at night, they're like black mirrors, reflecting nothing but darkness pressing in from outside. I don't know why I looked up. Maybe it was a sound I didn't consciously register, or maybe it was just that prickling feeling you get when something's off. But my eyes flicked toward the dining room, and that's when I saw it, the flicker of movement, just beyond the glass. My first thought was, oh, it's nothing. Probably a stray cat, or maybe a branch straying in the wind. I live in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where nothing ever happens. But then I looked again, and my blood turned to ice. There was a man standing at my dining room window. Not just standing, he was staring. His eyes were locked on me, unblinking, like he'd been watching me for hours. His face was pale, almost ghostly in the faint light, and his expression, it wasn't curious or confused. It was intense, like he was studying me, like he knew me. My heart slammed against my ribs, so loud I thought he could hear it. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It was like the world had slowed down, and all that existed was me and this stranger, separated by a single pane of glass. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen, but it felt like forever. Then, something snapped inside me, some primal instinct screaming, run. I bolted off the couch, my phone clattering to the floor, and sprinted for the stairs. My feet pounded against the wood, each step echoing in my ears like a drum. I didn't look back. All I could think was, what if he's coming inside? What if he's already at the door? My house, my safe little haven, felt like a trap. I made it to my bedroom and slammed the door shut, my hands shaking so bad I could barely turn the lock. My mind was racing, a jumble of panic and disbelief. This isn't happening, I kept telling myself. This can't be real. But it was. I grabbed the only thing I could think of. A metal bar from an old dumbbell set in the corner. It was heavy, cold in my hands, and it gave me something to hold onto, something to make me feel less helpless. I crouched down by the bed, clutching the bar like my life depended on it, and I listened. The house was silent again, but it wasn't comforting. It was the kind of silence that hides things, the kind that makes every creak and groan feel like a threat. I strained my ears, waiting for the sound of a door rattling, a window breaking, footsteps on the stairs. Every second stretched into eternity, my pulse hammering in my throat. I kept picturing his face, those eyes boring into me, and I wondered, how long was he there? How many nights has he been watching me? I don't know how long I stayed like that, crouched in the dark, my breath shallow and ragged. It could have been minutes or hours, but eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know if he was still there. I crept to the front bedroom, the one with the window overlooking the street, and I peeled back the curtain just enough to peek out. My heart was in my throat, expecting to see him standing on the lawn, staring up at me, but what I saw was somehow worse. He was walking down the street, hands in his pockets, casual as anything. Like he hadn't just been peering into my home, violating every sense of safety I had. He didn't look back, didn't hurry. He just strolled away, disappearing into the shadows at the end of the block. I stood there, trembling, watching until he was gone, and even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't really gone, that he'd be back. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I checked every lock in the house, twice, 3 times. I dragged a chair under the doorknob of my bedroom and kept that metal bar next to me. Every time I heard a sound, it made me jump. I kept replaying it in my head, his face, his stare, the way he just watched. Who was he? Why was he there? Was he just some creep passing through? Or was he someone who'd been watching me for weeks, waiting for the right moment? The next morning, I called a friend to come over because I couldn't be alone. I told them everything, and they tried to reassure me, saying maybe it was just a drunk guy or someone lost. But I could see the unease in their eyes, and it didn't help. I got curtains for the dining room windows that same week, heavy ones that block out everything. I started locking the doors the second I get home, even in the middle of the day. But no matter what I do, I can't shake that image of his face pressed against the glass, his eyes burning into me. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet again, I feel it. That prickling sensation, like someone's out there, just beyond the curtains. I tell myself it's just my imagination, that he's gone for good, but deep down, I'm not so sure. Because once you've seen someone watching you like that, once you felt that kind of violation, it never really leaves you. I was 7 years old, standing in my bedroom, the morning sun spilling through my window like it did every day. It was one of those crisp, early mornings where the world feels fresh, and I was getting ready for school, tugging off my pajamas with the kind of carefree energy only a kid has. My room was my sanctuary, filled with stuffed animals on the bed, posters of my favorite cartoons on the walls, and that big window that let me watch the world outside. I loved looking out there, spotting birds flitting between the trees or squirrels darting across the backyard. It was my little ritual, a moment of calm before the rush of the school day. That morning, I was halfway through changing, my pajama top tossed on the floor, when I glanced out the window, expecting to see a sparrow or maybe the neighbor's cat prowling around. But what I saw stopped me cold. In the backyard next door, there was a man, a middle-aged guy, sitting in a lawn chair, and in his hands, pressed right up to his face, were binoculars pointing straight at my window. Straight at me. My stomach dropped, a sick, twisting feeling that I didn't fully understand at 7 but knew was wrong. I stood there, frozen, half-naked, my arms instinctively crossing over my chest like they could shield me from his gaze. His face was obscured by those binoculars, but I could feel his eyes, intense and unyielding, locked onto me. It wasn't a casual glance or a neighbor just chilling outside. This was something else, something that made my skin prickle and my heart pound so hard I thought it might burst. I don't know how long I stood there, caught in that awful moment, but it felt like forever. Then panic took over. I yanked my shirt on, fumbling with the sleeves, my hands trembling so bad I could barely get them through. I ran out of my room, my bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor, and burst into the kitchen where my parents were sipping coffee, getting ready for their own day. "There's a man," I stammered, my voice high and shaky. "He's watching me, with binoculars." My mom's face changed in an instant, were increasing her forehead. My dad was up in a flash. Both of them rushing to my room, me trailing behind, my heart still racing. They peered out the window, scanning the neighbor's yard, but it was empty. The lawn chair was there, but the man was gone. No trace of him, like he'd vanished into thin air. My dad even went outside, walking the perimeter of our yard, checking the neighbor's property. But there was nothing, no footprints, no dropped binoculars, no sign anyone had been there at all. They came back inside, and my mom knelt down, pulling me into a hug. "It's okay, sweetie," she said, her voice soft but strained. "Maybe it was just someone looking at birds or something." My dad nodded, adding, "Yeah, probably just a misunderstanding." But I could see it in their eyes, they were rattled, too. They were trying to calm me down, but I knew they didn't fully believe their own words. And I didn't believe them either. That man wasn't watching birds, he was watching me. That day, I went to school, but I was a mess. I couldn't focus, couldn't shake the image of those binoculars, the way they glinted in the morning light, aimed right at my window. I kept wondering, how long was he there? Had he been watching me other mornings, when I didn't notice? The thought made me feel exposed, like my room wasn't mine anymore. That night, my parents closed the curtains in my bedroom, something we'd never bothered with before. They told me to keep them shut when I changed, and I did, religiously. But even with the curtains drawn, I felt him. That creeping sensation, like his eyes were still out there, waiting. For weeks, I was on edge. Every morning, I'd peek through a tiny gap in the curtains before changing, scanning the neighbor's yard for that lawn chair, for him. I stopped lingering by the window, stopped watching the birds. My little ritual was ruined, tainted by fear. I started having nightmares of a faceless man with binoculars, standing just outside my room, their lenses glowing in the dark. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, clutching my blanket, afraid to even look at the window. My parents tried to help. They talked to the neighbors, asked if anyone had seen a strange guy hanging around, but no one had. The neighbor whose yard he'd been in said they didn't know anyone like that, and their lawn chair was always out there, so it didn't prove anything. The police couldn't do much either since no crime had been committed, just a kid's word against nothing. But I knew what I saw. I knew how it felt, that violation of my safe space, my childhood innocence cracked like a broken window. Years later, I still think about it. I'm older now, living in a different house, but I never leave my curtains open at night. I check my locks obsessively, and I've got a little camera by my front door, just in case. That memory, that moment when I realized someone was watching me, it's burned into me. It taught me something no 7-year-old should have to learn. That even in your own home, your own room, you're not always safe. That there are people out there who see your privacy as something to take, something to steal. I never saw that man again, thank God. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the morning, getting ready for the day, I feel it, a prickle on the back of my neck, like someone's out there, watching. I tell myself it's just my imagination, just the scars of that day. But I always close the curtains, just to be sure. I was 11 years old when my family packed up and moved to a rural bungalow, out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by rolling farmland and dense woods. To me, it was paradise. No neighbors for miles, just open fields and the kind of quiet you only get far from the city. The house was perfect, with these massive picture windows that framed the countryside like a painting. My favorite was the one in my bedroom facing the backyard, where I could see the woods stretching out into the distance. I'd spend hours there, daydreaming, or walking my dog, Rusty, through the trails behind the house, savoring the solitude. It felt like the world was mine. But that fall, something changed. It started small, just a feeling, like a whisper at the back of my mind. I'd be out with Rusty, tromping through the woods, and I'd get this prickling sensation, like someone was watching me. I'd stop, look around, but there was never anything, just trees and silence. At first, I brushed it off. I mean, I was 11. My imagination was always running wild. But the feeling didn't go away. It got stronger, especially in my bedroom, right by that big window. I'd be doing homework or reading, and I'd feel it again, this heavy, invisible stare pressing through the glass. I started avoiding the window at night, keeping my eyes on the floor, but it was like the darkness outside was alive, waiting for me to look. Then the nightmares started. Every night, the same image. A man, faceless, standing in the backyard, staring at the house. In the dreams, I'd be frozen, unable to move, while he just stood there, his presence filling me with dread. I'd wake up gasping, my heart pounding, and I'd lie there, too scared to look at the window, terrified I'd see him for real. My parents noticed I was jumpy, but when I tried to explain, they chalked it up to the move, to being in a new place. "You're just adjusting," my mom would say, ruffling my hair. But I knew it was more than that. Something was wrong. Then strange things started happening. We'd wake up to find food missing from the kitchen. A loaf of bread, half a pack of cookies, gone overnight. My parents thought it was me or my little sister, sneaking snacks, but we swore it wasn't us. I started noticing other stuff, too. Late at night, I'd hear heavy footsteps in the kitchen. Nothing like my sister's light patter or my parents' familiar tread. They were slow, deliberate, like someone was trying not to be heard. I'd lie in bed, clutching my blanket, telling myself it was just the house settling, but deep down, I didn't believe it. One night, around 2:30 a.m. I woke up to those footsteps again. They were louder this time, closer, like they were right outside the kitchen door that led to the backyard. My room was pitch black, the only light coming from the faint glow of the moon through that huge window. I lay there, paralyzed, my breath shallow, every muscle screaming at me to stay still. I don't know why, but I felt like if I moved, if I made a sound, he'd know I was awake. I kept my eyes squeezed shut, praying the footsteps would stop, that they'd fade away, but they didn't. They just lingered, like whoever it was wasn't in a hurry. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. I opened my eyes, just a sliver, and turned my head toward the window. That's when I saw him. A man, standing in our backyard, right outside my window. He was tall, his silhouette sharp against the moonlight, and he was staring at the house. Not moving, not blinking, just watching. I couldn't see his face, but I felt his gaze, like it was cutting through the glass, straight into me. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. All I could do was lie there, pretending to be asleep, while my entire world shrank to the terror of that moment. I don't know how long he stood there. It felt like forever. Eventually, I must have passed out from sheer exhaustion, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. The backyard was empty, the sun shining like nothing had happened. I stumbled into the kitchen, pale and shaking, and told my parents everything. At first, they brushed it off, saying it was probably just another bad dream, but I didn't let it go. I was desperate, on the verge of tears, my voice cracking as I begged them to believe me. Finally, my dad agreed to check the property. He grabbed a flashlight and headed out to the shed in the backyard, this old, rickety thing we barely used. I stayed inside, watching from the kitchen, my stomach in knots. When he came back, his face was white. He didn't say much, just told my mom to call the police. Within an hour, our yard was crawling with cops. They'd found blankets, empty food wrappers, a knife, and a bag of stolen jewelry in the shed. Someone had been living there, right under our noses, for weeks. The police pieced it together. A man, a drifter with a violent record, had been squatting in our shed, sneaking into the house at night to steal food, and watching us through the windows. They found footprints leading from the shed to my bedroom window, proof he'd been there, night after night, staring in. They said we were lucky that his history suggested he wasn't just watching. He might have been planning something worse. They never caught him. He'd slipped away before the police arrived, leaving behind a trail of fear that never really faded. We moved not long after to a house in the suburbs, far from those wide-open fields. But I never forgot that feeling, that bone-deep certainty that I was being watched. I don't trust big windows anymore. I keep my curtains drawn, my doors locked, and I've got a dog that barks at the slightest sound. Even now, years later, when I'm alone at night, I wonder if he's still out there, somewhere, watching someone else.